close to 400 register, but we never get that close. Or that full. Welcome. Hey, I forgot to put a ruler or a straight edge on the supply list. If you have one there, it'd be handy. You can make do without it, but you might have a little wavy line. Also, if you want to grab an extra sheet of just plain copier paper, I'm going to just show the basic fold. It's very simple, but I'm going to do it once just on a piece of, not my beautiful paper, just to get the hang of it. So do that. Hey, type where you're from, and if you have any sort of special winter solstice tradition, I'd love to know. Put that in the chat. And welcome, welcome. I know people are joining. Yay, we're over 100. I paid for more than 100. Yay. Yeah, say where you're from, and if you have a special solstice tradition. I'm just going to wait a couple minutes here while people jump in. I did forget to put a ruler or straight edge on the supply list if you have one. Also, if you just have a blank sheet of paper, regular 8.5 by 11, we're just going to learn the fold before we do it with our nice paper. You're welcome to go for it with your nice paper. It's not hard, but sometimes I find that helpful. Welcome, 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 Mississippi, Maryland, New York, Massachusetts. Greening the house for the winter solstice. Wonderful. Washington, watching the sunset on the solstice. Wonderful. San Francisco hangs a piece of calligraphy. Beautiful. So if you're just joining, type in the chat where you're from, and if you have a winter solstice tradition, or summer if you're down under, but I know it's really early in the morning there. So maybe not. The Netherlands, welcome. Okay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to do a quick PowerPoint presentation about the paper year, my subscription program. It won't be very long, and then we'll make the project. If you have questions at any time, just type them into the chat. Lori is here helping me monitor that. Please mute yourself if you're unmuted. You should have come in muted. We've got a lot of people here, so that will just help. And if you don't mind turning your video off, at the very end, we'll come back on and we'll show what we created and have a big solstice viewing, lantern viewing. Okay, so let me share my screen. So welcome again, everyone.
Oh,
Ellen, we can't hear you.
Ellen, you're
Sorry,
muted. Sorry, I muted you by accident.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about the paper year, my membership program, and show you some images, and then we'll jump into the project. So I just, Amanda Gorman is the poet laureate who spoke at Biden's inauguration, and I love this quote about light. As long as we're brave enough to see it, and if only we're brave enough to be it, we are light. So just a little bit about me if you don't know me. I got interested in paper back in 1986 when I took an art course in Germany as a junior year abroad student. And that class sparked my interest in paper as a material and all of the ways that you can manipulate it. I moved to New York City after college for the vibe of the city. After living in Germany, I wanted to live in a big city. A brief trip to Japan in 1988 reignited my interest in paper, and I decided that I was going to learn to make it by hand, knowing that they did that in Japan. Little did I know that there was a paper studio in New York City where I was living called Dudonné Paper Mill. And I ended up working there for 6 years. This is a really quick overview. I fell into writing how-to books, which I really love. And I started out writing books about paper making, and then have written some books on paper crafts. And I'm excited to share my next book, The Art of Papercraft, which will come out in February. By the way, my next free Zoom will be on February 15th, of a Zoom like this. And we'll be making a project, and that's the launch date. That's when these books will be in stores. You can pre-order this book now. There's some links in the chat. You can find that link. And if you pre-order, you'll get a free download of one of the projects. And I also have a reservation card that I'm sending to people. So I love designing with paper and sharing ideas for transforming it from 2 into 3 dimensions. And the Paper Year is a membership program that I started last January to inspire you with a new monthly technique and project. In addition to gaining skills for working with paper, you'll become part of our paper-loving community. I am so inspired by what happens in an online classroom, and I know you will be too. So this link is in the chat as well. Just going to show you a few of the projects we've made, highlights from 2021. We did a little paper weaving onto a sculpted paper form last January. It's a different form than we're doing today, but the paper weaving is similar. We also made a paper cloth pocketbook in February. And then in March, we had a guest artist, Susan Joy Scher, who showed us how to make this matchbook structure. In the second quarter, our guest artist, by the way, I have a guest artist every quarter, so we get some new fusion of ideas. And that was Alyssa Campbell. I see she's here today. Thank you, Alyssa, who introduced us to paper electronics. And then in the third quarter, we created these envelope albums, some wallpaper pocketbooks with guest artist Paula Krieg, and patchwork wall hangings. We explore all kinds of papers as well as techniques. And then finally, in this last quarter, we did some paper engineering with guest artist Sean Sheehy, who designed this pop-up skull lantern, and some paper cutting and book arts. So just briefly about the program, and this is on the registration page, which is in the chat, the link. There are 2 plans and 2 payment options, and you can sign up to pay by the month, or if you sign up for the full year, and that's only available at this time of year, you'll get 2 free months. So you can sign up just to receive the PDFs only, or you can sign up for the all-in plan, which includes the PDF video instructions, a couple of monthly online Zoom meetings, which I'll talk about in a minute. And by the way, if you join now, you will receive access to all of the projects that are already in the library. So here's what the PDFs look like, and the PDFs you can download and print out and review anytime. And then this gives you an idea of the look and length of the monthly video. But with the all-in plan, you will also have access to this wonderful online community where we share our work. You can ask questions and provide supportive feedback and share tips and tricks with other members. The monthly Zoom meetings we have are twice a month, which is new this year. So we'll have a special guest at our regular Zoom meetings, which will either be the guest artist or a paper supplier who will offer us a discount. So that's something new I'm doing this year. And then we'll also have a quarterly surface design workshop. And you'll see an image of what we'll be doing in the first quarter in just a minute. And I'll also have a 2-hour open studio each month. So you can come work on the project hang out and share your work with other members. So here's a sneak peek at what we'll be doing in the first quarter of this year. We'll create this star box with guest artist Isabel Uria. I love to share variations for projects, and she actually had some variations on this one, making it can be a box or an illuminated item, a lantern or an ornament that you hang. Members often come up with their own paper twists, which we see in the classroom. And then I'm also adding a monthly motivation this year, an exercise which will keep you engaged throughout the month if you need that. That's optional. And then in February, we'll make this slice form heart. In March, we'll be exploring paper and stitching on paper, which is one of my favorite things. And then we'll have that special workshop also in March, the surface design with Susan Scher. And she'll show us some rubbing techniques, which will make a little sampler that and the samples get housed in this tuxedo flap structure. Okay, that's the paper year in a nutshell. Again, if you have any questions, I'll be answering those at the end, but you can type them in the chat at any time. And please visit the link that I put in the chat to watch the video trailer, read more, and register if you're interested. And this registration window right now is today through January 10th. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen and we'll get to the project. Okay, so if you've just joined us, if you have a ruler handy, you can get by without one, but I forgot to put it on the supply list. And then I'm going to do the fold just quickly on a regular sheet of paper. So if you have a regular sheet, you can grab, so not the project paper, these will be my project papers, just to do it once before you actually do it on your paper. If you don't, just watch. I just think it helps to see everything once before you actually jump into your regular paper. Okay, I'm going to put this way. So this is just an 8.5 by 11 sheet. Here's my sample that you saw to get you here. And I have woven panels. See this just on two sections. Depending on the timing, we might just weave one section, but you can do more weaving later. You'll get what you need, in other words. Okay, so this is a very simple one sheet book fold that I've adapted. Some of you will recognize this, but instead of having pages, I just have seams for some of my sections. So I'm going to just fold in half. So I'm just showing you the structure now. A hamburger. And then I'll keep that folded and fold again into quarters. So I've got 4 layers of paper. Now I'm going to open that back up. And I need about a 1/2 inch seam on either side. You do not need to measure this. Let's see. I'm going to have this doesn't really matter. Mountain fold is up. So about a 1/2 inch. Okay, now I need the 1/2 inch on the other side. And a easy way to make sure that that's the same size is to fold this up again. So I'm just folding on that middle fold. And then I'm going to flip this over. And that fold I just made is underneath here. I'm going to use that as a guide for how far up I fold this. So now let me unfold that and show you what I've got. Okay, so I've got those 2 even seams and the center fold, and this is still a sheet of paper that's folded in half. Okay. So now I'm going to unfold it all the way. And this is where you need your ruler. If you're just joining us, forgot to put that on the list. You could just cut it freehand. For some reason, you don't have one. So now watch what I do before you do it. You do not want to cut through these seams. Okay, so I'm going to cut from this point to this point, leaving those 1/2 inch seams connected. Okay, if you accidentally cut too far, you could tape it. So now what happens is I've got a mountain fold here. This is going to really depend on how your paper is oriented. It might not be the same as mine, in other words, but I'm going to make this a mountain fold, and then I'm going to close this. So see what I did? I just took the full sheet, folded it in half, but I have opened this up, and now my seams are both pointing in this direction. I'm just going to go ahead and reverse them so that they're more flexible, and ideally they just pop straight out now. So that's the structure, and we will glue or tape those at the end, but we need to do our weaving first. Okay, so now I'm going to move to my actual paper. Let me talk a little bit about the types of paper or the paper thickness. So I said 2 sort of sturdy text weight sheets, and that's what this one is. I'm sorry, I don't remember where I got this paper. If anybody recognizes it, you could type it into the chat, but I don't even recognize it myself. And then this paper is a marbled paper from Mulberry Paper and More. It's on the thinner side. And then what I'm using today are these 2. So the sky is really the limit. So see, here I have a more plain paper, and I'm weaving in a decorative. So my lantern is a plainer paper, and I'm weaving in decorative. Here, I'm going to do the opposite. I've got a more decorative paper, but it's the correct weight. It's like a heavy text. You could use a cover stock, but it's just harder to cut through. So, and sometimes doesn't fold as well, and we're doubling up layers. So that's why I go with sort of a heavy text or light cover. And then in terms of weaving, you don't want something too flimsy because the weaving process is harder. Okay, so now we're going to do that same thing. So you need to choose which is your lantern base. And we're going to fold it. We're going to do that hamburger origami fold. I've also done this with minimal tools. So if you have a heavier paper, sometimes you have to score that. So with the heavy text, not too stiff, you can just fold easily. Okay, and then I'm going to fold that in quarters. And now I need to fold the 2 seams like I did before. So I'm going to start with one short side. It's doubled over, and I'm going to fold about a 1/2 inch. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm going to reverse that right now. So I did that later the last time. So just so it folds in both directions. And now I'm going to have that folded so it's tucked underneath, and I'm going to fold my middle fold over. So now I'm 4 layers again, and I can see where that seam was folded under. And I'm going to fold the second seam up to that same point so that they're exactly the same and it looks nice and neat. Okay, and then I'm going to reverse that fold as well. Okay, it's harder to see now, but here are my 2 seams and my center fold. Now I'm going to open this up I think I'm going to do this on this side so you can see everything better. I'll talk about that. I'm going to cut between the two seams along that center line. So I want to make sure that I leave those seams connected. I'll cut on that center line. So now this is how it looks. And then I'll flip it back over. I'm going to reverse this fold so that when I fold this in half again to this shape, I have an opening. And this is my lantern form. By the way, this is just simply made from an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So we didn't have to cut anything down. Well, maybe you did, depending on your paper. But you could make this in multiple mini sizes. So you could make smaller ones, bigger ones. Okay, so now we're going to do the weaving. And because this is so busy, you can choose now whether you want to weave onto the front or the back. It's fun to see the front, but I'm going to weave on the back side so that you can see better what I'm doing. And you can weave into any panel. Don't worry about weaving on the same exact one that I'm weaving on. I am going to cut my second sheet into to fit the exact width and height of a panel, which in inches is 3 5/8 by 5.5 inches. So I need one of those, maybe two. So 3 5/8 by 5.5 inches. Maybe you can type that in the chat, Lori. And then if you're in centimeters, it's always best to measure your actual, because maybe you're using an A4 sheet, which is a little different than mine. So I'm actually not even going to say how many centimeters this is.
Sorry, Helen, you said 3 5/8 by 5 inches?
By 5.5.
By 5.5, okay.
So it's the width between the center line and the seam line, and the height from the cut to the bottom edge. So I got to cut mine real quick here. You can get 4 of these out. I would really only weave into 2 panels because the way I'm going to do it, you would run into some, you might cut into another panel. So if you want to just go ahead and cut 2, but we're probably only going to do 1 during this demo. Okay, I'll give you a second to do that, but you can see how mine, it fits right in there. Doesn't have to be perfect. So it's fitting between those 2 folds and then between this cut and the bottom edge. I'll go ahead and cut another one in case I have time. 1, 2, 3.5, 3 5/8. So if you are going to weave 2 panels, I would do the 2 diagonal. And you'll see why, I think, in a minute. There's some cuts that we're going to make all the way to the seam edge. And if you tried to do that right next to each other, it could cause some issues. It might not work. All right, let me see. Just raise your hand if you're ready to move on. Okay, I'll give you a couple minutes. Okay, again, if you have any questions, just feel free to type them into the chat. I see a lot of raised hands now, so I'm going to move on. Okay, so again, I'm going to work on the back side, and this all just really depends on your paper, whether it has a front or a back. But when you're weaving, you'll want to make sure you have the papers oriented so that the fronts both show up on the front side of your lantern. So just keep that in mind. My lantern front is very obvious because it's patterned versus unpatterned, but I'm going to start on the back. Now the one I'm weaving in, it's textured on this side and not on this side. So I'm going to be weaving in upside down so that everything will be in the same orientation. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make, this is my weft now, and just watch what I do. Don't start yet. I'm going to cut slits that go between, I'm just going to mark this so you can see really clearly. Let me see, I've got a pen. I'm going to go between the center line. So you don't need to draw these lines. I'm just doing it so you can see it's really clear. Okay. And then sometimes it is helpful to actually draw the lines you're going to cut. This will be on the inside. I don't normally, I just cut, but just watch what I do. I'm going to cut wavy lines. It makes for a fun wavy pattern. These could be straight, but also you don't have to use your ruler or anything. You can just cut. These are approximately 1 inch to 1 1/4 inches apart. And you see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could have 4 to 6, just depending on how you cut. You don't want them too close together because you want to be able to cut these little windows that I'm going to show you next. And in terms of far apart, it doesn't really matter. You could have 4. It creates more visual interest the more weaving you have. So between 4 and 6, I think drawing them is helpful. And then, or if you're really comfortable, some of you have done a lot of weaving with me, you can just cut those and you don't have to follow your lines exactly. I'm not managing to follow them perfectly. So now I've got my warp slits. Okay, and if you're quick and want to, you could do the same thing up here. Cut another series of slits. I'm just going to focus on this one panel. Now I'm going to take my weft. So this is what's going to weave in, and I'm going to cut this into strips. And they're going to be diagonal as well. You could draw them if you want. I'm just going to freehand, and I'm going to do 4. Just watch me first. So 1, 2. Okay, I'm going to do 3 cuts, which yields 4 strips. And I want to keep these in order so that they go back together. So this is the, I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage to cutting wavy strips. If you get them mixed up, it's hard to figure out how to put them back together. But on the flip side, if you had a pattern on your paper more distinct than mine, these wavy lines help them, they'll dovetail right together, and your pattern will, depending on how many windows you cut, be really visible. Okay, we're doing good on time, I think. So again, I'm weaving upside down. I've got my paper face down just so the pattern isn't distracting to you and you can see it better. So I also have my weft strips upside down because then everything will be on the correct side. So now I'm going to weave, and most of you have probably woven before. I'm going to start on top. You could start underneath, and you just have to alternate over, under, over, under. I like to use my tip of my exacto to kind of prod things along. So I'm just barely touching the paper and it helps move it. And now my second strip will alternate. So since it's over here, it's going to start under. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this quickly. You can start or watch. I'll give you some time to catch up after I've got it woven. But I want to show you something when I get to that fourth strip. So I'm making sure the top lines up and the bottom lines up, because then they'll fit nicely together. You can flip this over and see how it looks on the other side. Looks good. I didn't talk about this before, but it was in the supplies. I generally have one paper is more translucent and one is not as translucent. So I'm going to start at the top here for no reason. And I'm going to do, again, the opposite.
There's a question of, can you use translucent vellum for one side?
Yes, you can use vellum. I'm going to show you gluing down the ends, and vellum doesn't like to get wet. It kind of wobbles and wiggles. So you might test how the gluing looks. And if you can do a really light glue, you'll see what we do in terms of gluing. It's trickier with double-sided tape. I know there's really thin double-sided tape and you can tape these ends, but it would be tedious because you have a lot of ends. So my last piece, this is sometimes where you run into trouble. So take a look if you haven't done weaving before and need to see this. Sometimes it doesn't fit in, or it's not easy to weave like this wider. See, this is the widest section. I'm not going to be able to fit that through this skinny, the skinnier section down here. So there are a couple ways to do this. I'm putting this on here and I can see this will fit exactly. But you could, if you want, if yours doesn't fit. Now I've also pushed these over. I use my knife to do this. Push these over so they're really tight together. Depending on your paper, you might not be able to get them quite as tight. So if you set this on here and you don't have room, you can always just trim off the straight edge, like trim an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch off, and then that will make it smaller. Now, the other thing, like I was saying, this is wide. It's not going to fit if I try to weave. If I try to put this in here underneath, it won't fit. You see how wide it is? But I have this extra space from this strip here. If I go in from behind, I have all that space and I can push that in to where it needs to be. And then it's the right width, where it needs to be. So that is my trick. And then I can, it's still, this wider part wouldn't fit through this next section. So I can take advantage of this extra space here. You have to kind of hold on to the bottom edge, and I can pull that through using that space. And then I'll just continue. I'm going to ultimately get to that fatter section where I don't have to do that anymore. And so see how that's fitting in nicely. And now it's going to fit because I'm at the wide part. So that last strip just sometimes is a little tricky. One other thing you can do is you can extend. I wouldn't go too far because we're getting close to the edge here, but you could extend the warp cuts a little bit to give yourself some more room. Okay. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. You can click on the little raise your hand if you're done. Because we got a couple more steps I want to get through. Or thumbs up, either one. All right.
So it's interesting. The raised hand stays up long term. The thumbs up disappears. Also, the raised hand pushes everybody up to the top so you can see them all at once. Just
oh, cool. That's it.
So the raised hand rather than the thumbs up might be a better option for checking people's progress. I just learned that myself.
Yeah. Okay.
Christy is asking if you can show that trick again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Let me take this piece out. Okay, so what I'm doing to get the wider parts into skinnier areas is taking advantage of the slit that is in the neighboring weft strip. So I know this needs to fit in like this. And if I were going to start here, this is too wide. So I can actually slip it and use that extra space and then come grab it under here and pull it through to where it needs to fit. I did that the wrong way. I have to start here and pull it through and then flip it over. Okay. And now I'm going to hold that in place and I'm going to flip it upside down and take advantage of the space of this slit in the neighbor and pull that through. Until it's in the right spot and then it fits. And then I just keep doing that. And by the way, there's a link in the chat to an online class that I do every year called Weave Through Winter. It's a month-long paper weaving class. We learn all kinds of techniques and it's a daily practice. It's really rewarding. It's really intense too. Okay, now I'm going to move on for the sake of time. This is being recorded if you need to come back. And I'm just going to make sure everything is lined up at the top and the bottom. You can trim those strips later if they are too long. So don't worry too much about it. But if they're exact, just line them up. So now I'm going to take my glue and I'm going to tack down all of the loose ends. So I've got loose ends up here and underneath. And I don't know what kind of glue applicator or brush you have, but you really only need glue on the very top edge. So just like 1/8 of an inch. Light coat, if you have a brush, if you accidentally got too much, you could smooth it out. You don't want too much glue because when you do this, it would ooze out. So you want to make sure you're not gluing this shut. So really light. Glue stick is a little trickier just to get a thin edge. And I'll talk about why I do that thin edge, but you could put glue on the entire piece. It's only if you wanted to cut a window in this particular section that you need that thin. And that's a little bit advanced. So if you're a newbie to this, just put glue on the whole darn thing. See, I'm going to do it here. But a thin coat, you don't want it to be oozing out where it shouldn't. So I've got 4 loose ends here on this side. And then I'll have 4 over here as well. So if you have any questions about gluing, ask right now because I'll be done gluing soon. And I want to be able to show you. I can undo one if I have to. You know, usually when you glue, you use scrap paper and you're really protective of all your surfaces, but this is so tedious that I don't do that. But you certainly could have scrap paper underneath, blocking off any areas that shouldn't be covered. So now that is my paper weaving. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to catch up. The glue applicator, someone is asking. I'll put that in the chat. I'm going to put the company. It's how do I do this? Okay.
The lampshot.com.
Lampshop.com. Yes.
Okay, you already did.
And I think it's under tools. That website is kind of old.
Yeah.
Someone's asking, can you use a wallpaper remnant? I think so. Yeah. I would just test the gluing, but I'm pretty sure it would glue. So the wallpaper often has like a coating on it. There are other places, by the way, that sell these types of glue applicators. I just got a couple from Micromark. It has a metal tip. I don't know if anyone here, I haven't experimented with the metal tip versus the plastic tip to see whether the metal tip doesn't clog, because this ends up clogging. But then I just put it in hot water and use a needle to kind of clean it, and it's reusable. Okay, so Heidi's saying she found the Micromark metal tip difficult to get glue through. So yeah, maybe it's meant for a certain type of glue. Anyways, okay, I want to show you the windows. So wherever you are, if you're not done weaving, just watch. You can actually cut windows before gluing, but it's a bit better to have everything in place. So I said to bring a piece of plastic. So this was an old, not an old, plastic placemat, you know, just to use for a placemat. And it's very thin plastic, but a yogurt container, a laundry bottle, anything like that is a similar kind of plastic. So you might have something in your recycling. And hopefully, I didn't get too many questions about that. Hopefully you got something. You could also use a heavy cardstock in a pinch, but it's going to cut through quicker. So I'm using this as a miniature cutting mat. And now you have to decide which paper you want to cut through. You can cut through both. You can see here I have windows in the more plain paper and my decorative paper. So you can do windows everywhere, or you can pick an either or. So I am going to, because my white paper is more translucent, that's going to let the light through. I'm going to cut into the blue and remove some of the pattern. I'm going to have this whole pattern of this beautiful paper on this panel. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to, so I've cut you do need to cut your, whatever you're starting with into something like this. It's about a 1/2 inch at the bottom or a centimeter, and then maybe 2 inches or 5 or 6 centimeters at the top. And it's angled, and that's so that it fits into all the different curved shapes. And I might be cutting it to tweak it. Or I might have another one because I started with a huge, a huge piece of this. So you can shape it as you need. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in between the layers so that I can cut a window in just the top layer. And depending on how the shape of your plastic, you want to make sure that you are cutting onto the plastic. So can you see this is a good example here? My plastic tapers down here. So if I tried to cut right here, I would actually my plastic isn't there. So sometimes I move it. Now you can cut these windows any shape, but I generally just cut, let me get one cut so you can see, along I follow the edges of my little woven square-ish piece here. So I've cut all 4. And so see, now I've got a window, and I'm not going to be able to show you, but if I hold that up to the light, it's going to come through. And the way I discovered this, I've not seen anyone else do this technique, was I was trying to make a lamp and I thought it would look cool with 2 papers woven. But when I realized when I turned the light on, it's 2 layers, one in the front, one in the back. So it wasn't actually that interesting. They just blended. There are some interesting things about that, though. I saw the light coming through the slits and that pattern, but I want a little more light coming through certain areas. So that's how I came up with this. So now I can just cut windows. I'm going to cut them all in my blue patterned paper. So every section that I have that is blue. So now I've got 2. The thing I was talking about gluing before, if you can follow this, is I glued that whole bottom piece down because that's where my strips, these are glued. So I won't be able to get my cutting mat in there. So that's okay. Those bottom ones won't have windows. So let me know if you have any questions about this. I started to talk about it, but I do swivel my cutting mat as I'm cutting to make sure that it is underneath where I'm cutting, because it is possible to accidentally cut through both layers. Okay. It's getting tight on time here. I'm going to show you how to assemble the lantern in just a moment when I cut all my little windows. So see, I've cut windows in every single, nope, skip 2. Square, except for those top and bottom ones that are glued. Now, those of you who have woven with me before know that you can also cut windows into the other paper, or you can cut windows on the back side, but that's a little bit advanced. If you can figure it out, go for it. But there is the danger that when you put this cutting mat in, you can't see that there might be a window on the other side. And sometimes you accidentally cut through. You cut a window in both papers and then you have a hole. So there is my weaving. And again, if you want to weave into your other diagonal section, you would do that now before you assemble your lantern. And the assembly is super simple, and you probably already can see what to do, but just watch me. So basically, I just need to put glue here and here, and then I'll close this, and it'll glue the 2 seams. This would be fine to do with glue stick or double-sided tape. I just do, this is how I glue. There's no the rhyme or reason to why I squiggle it like that. Okay. And I know I glue a lot, so I know that's like just the right amount. It's not going to ooze out, but you could have scrap paper. And then that glues the two seams. And I've got my lantern complete. Now I wanted to show you a couple of types of lights that I use a lot.
There's a question about glue. What kind of glue do you use?
I use PVA. It's a white bookbinding glue, polyvinyl acetate. And you get it from an art supply store or a bookbinding supplier online. You can look up PVA glue. Talus is a supplier online. So there are two types of lights I like to use, and this is actually a fairly large. You can buy puck lights. I don't have one of those here, but those are those round LED or no battery operated lights that sometimes you put under counters to provide illumination in the kitchen. That would fit inside of here, and it would give more light than this tiny little tea light. But in the right space, that tea light gives off quite a bit of light. If you use a candle, I would put it in a glass protective holder just in case. And then these fairy lights, I teach other classes with lights, so some of you probably have fairy lights. This is how it comes. It's wound up together, but you can unfurl it. This is 7 feet, and just tuck it in there, and creates a nice light. Let me see if you can see my weaving here if I put the light in. So you see how there's a little more light. I have a lot of light in the room too. But there's a little more light coming through those windows. So you can really play with how the light comes through. And yeah, paper weaving is super fun. So are there any other questions? Does anybody have any questions about the paper year? Again, all the links are in the chat, and you'll get the recording. And I'll send you the links. I can't send you the chat the way I send this email. So if you need anything from the chat, grab it now. This wasn't a very super busy chat. I see an older question. Is elephant hide paper equivalent to light cover stock? Yes, there are two weights though. So there's a heavy and a lightweight elephant hide. I see the lighter weight more commonly, so I'm guessing that's what you have. And it has a nice glow with light coming through. Heidi was commenting on the hot water for cleaning the tip of the glue nozzle. I do find that works really well. It sort of dissolves the glue. Okay, I want to make sure we see people's lanterns. So there's one more question. Where do I get the lights? I get all these on Amazon. You do have to order them in multiples. So I think you have to order 12 of these. It's reasonable though, $10 or something for 12. And just Google battery operated tea lights. And then these are called fairy lights. And you have to buy them in packs also of 10. The fairy lights you can find at Michael's and Joann. You can find other tea lights too at those kind of stores, even big box stores like Walmart, sometimes grocery stores. Not this exact one. This is the smallest one I found. But the fairy lights come in all different lengths. Like for weddings, they're used for weddings a lot. So in the sort of the floral section of Michael's, I'm not sure you can find the 7 foot long, which is the shortest one I found at those stores. They're generally selling the longer ones. Okay, let's do a screen share and hold up what you've made. So if you want to, everybody put yourself on gallery view.
And turn your video back on.
Yeah, if you have your video off, turn it on. And can you do a couple shots, Lori?
Yes, I will. While people are
Beautiful.
their videos on, I'm going to, let me see, I'm going to do a couple of shots. Always have to check my notes to remember how to do it.
Oh, these look great. It's so fun to see the different colored papers. Wow, Lauren's got some beautiful contrast going on.
It's taking me a while to get through all the screens, so
Keep holding them up. Yeah.
I keep holding them up, and turn on your video if you haven't.
Sweet. I'll include a photo in the replay.
Okay. I think I got
Nice work, everyone.
to all the videos. Okay.
And by the way, if you don't mind, I meant to say this earlier, take a photo and post on Instagram and tag me, Helen Hebert. I'll share it. Debbie's asking how to keep the lamp standing up straight. So I don't know exactly what you mean. There's the bottom, if you can see me now. The bottom is straight. I don't know if you're referring to just how it kind of wants to collapse maybe. So I would just crease the folds to get it into a box shape. So crease and reverse any folds you need to, and then it just sets straight on the bottom. Handmade paper, Evie's asking. Yes, that's suitable. Again, sometimes handmade paper is hard to cut with a knife, so I would just test that. Someone's saying Tim Holtz sells fairy lights in a 2-pack. Oh, that's great to know. What is a good source for elephant hide paper? Talus in the US is the only place I know that carries it, but I think there's some origami suppliers that carry it in smaller sheets. So that's what I have to say. Thank you. Lots of thank yous. Well, thanks everyone for coming. And again, yeah, share a photo on Instagram. I'd love to see it more up close than I'm able to see it here in Zoom.
Since this is about the winter solstice, I have an interesting factoid that I learned last year. In San Diego, where Gina and a couple of others of us are, because we're in the Pacific time zone, but we're actually so far east in it, our sunset starts getting later around December 8th or 10th, something like that. So we're on the upswing now.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So the official solstice date is the 21st.
Right.
But obviously we all live at different parts of the hemisphere. So
it depends on where you are in the time zone. So if you're in the eastern edge of the time zone, your winter solstice actually is earlier in December. Yeah. I assume that in the summer, probably maybe we also reach the peak later.
Right.
My guess. I don't know. I haven't figured that out. But for those of us who don't like it getting dark early, it was a nice boost to learn that last year, and I've already noticed it.
Hello. Yeah. Hello. Sorry, it's not where you are in the time zone. It has to do with the orbit of the Earth around the sun. The orbit is not perfectly round. So if you did noon exactly the same everywhere, then all the way around the calendar, then the days of the length of the days would change. So they're not going to do that. So it's a little bit of averaging so that the earliest sunset comes about 5 weeks before the latest sunrise. And it has to do with the orbit of the Earth, because that time will be, it'll change across the width of the of the time zone, because over here on the East Coast, we're way on the east edge of it too, but it's still the earliest is the same day all the way across. Does that help a little bit?
It's a little technical, but thank you for setting us straight.
Helen.
Yeah.
Hi. So
I'm
the winter solstice is celebrated on the 21st because it basically the holiday comes out from the Great Britain area, the Celts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we kind of honor the solstice on the 21st, 22nd, because it's the longest day or the longest night or the longest day, according to the coordinates of Great Britain, basically.
It is everywhere in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is everywhere.
So, but the thing is, things don't just normally stop and start getting lighter longer. You've got a gradual period. So, it starts earlier, but
Right. And daylight savings time was changed because every year things change a little bit. And this is what the wonderful thing I meant to say this earlier about light as a thread that has, because of the sun, we are alive, right? And so light has been with us throughout all time, and it will continue until the end of time. So I'm going to leave you with that. Enjoy the solstice. Enjoy your lanterns. Thank you for coming.
You.
Okay, thank you. This is great.
I did have one,
Thank
Helen,
you.
I did have one question to confirm.
Yeah.
You sent out an email today that if we were already signed up for the paper year this year, that unless we said we didn't want to for next year, we'll automatically renew. Is
Yes.
that correct? Okay, just double check.
Yeah. So that's right. That's why I sent it, because I didn't want you to not want to renew, and it will automatically renew.
Okay, great. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did
Thanks so
want
much.
to, sorry, this
Go
is
ahead.
Stephanie. I'm North Carolina Mountains.
Hi.
Hi. It's a pleasure. I got this from a friend. I did want to mention also a great source for people, also money saving, is to check your local thrift stores. We have an awesome thrift store that has all this like craft paper and everything, and it's like dirt cheap. So it's an awesome place. And also a great place to learn more about solstice, Earth and Sky, Earth's, I think it's earthandsky.net or earthsky.net.
Yes, thank
If
you.
you just type it in, it's awesome.
Thank you.
They'll send you emails.
Yeah. And several cities have reuse stores that have a lot of art supplies as well. I know there's Scrap in Portland and other places. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, you are all released. If anybody has a question, feel free to jump in. See you. Thanks for coming, and come to my next Zoom party. You'll get an announcement.
I'd love to.
About it in February.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Helen.
Bye.
Thank you, Helen.
Everybody.
Happy holidays,
Bye.
everybody.
Happy holidays. Bye.
That's somebody went in with
Yes.
Earth and Sky.
Good.
And
It's good to know where that.
So great
I
to
have a-
see everybody. You have a question?
Quick question. I'm on the monthly payment plan, but if I can save a few dollars, I know I want to be all in for the whole year. How do I
Yeah.
switch over to the one-time payment? Is that just an easy thing?
You need to email me,
Okay, I can do
and
that.
I have to cancel your current subscription, and then you
Okay.
can sign up. Yeah,
Okay,
but it's easy. Yeah.
okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to put the rest of you who are here into the waiting room, and you can sign out whenever you like. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Okay. So that was, I didn't mean for that. Here, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.